Welcome back to Natural 2. James and Nathan here with tabletop and D&D talk show goodness. And I'm enthused about our episode this week. Not that I'm ever not enthused, but and I hope that is evident in our recordings.
There'll certainly be shenanigans with this one, is what I'm expecting.
And I think that for me, I want to dial the shenanigans up a little bit.
Mhm.
Let's open the wide mouth side of the shenanigans canister and really just dump some out.
Mhm.
The discussion today is about real life adventure hooks or taking inspiration from things that actually have happened or are currently happening in our ridiculous real world for your tabletop game. And I don't know, frankly, I don't know why it took us almost a year to talk about this because it's weird stuff is going on every day in the actual world. Uh and stuff that I wish I could actually join a real adventuring party. I wish that I was not a like -1 level commoner and that I could join a real adventuring party and go
Mhm.
on some of these adventures, frankly. Uh and I know that there's another episode in that, by the way, but
What we are in real life.
well the notion that being an adventurer is horrible.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That honestly would be a really fun topic, is highlighting the shit that we pass over in our traditional games.
Yeah, and also kind of challenging that idea. I sort of feel the same way about like immortality. If they whenever there's an immortal character in any fiction, it's always like, "Oh, it's so hard." Or superheroes. God, they do it all the time with superheroes.
Oh
Oh
no, we
man,
already went off track.
having all this power, it sucks so bad.
Mhm.
Screw you. Anyway, reeling it back in. We each have 5 real world examples.
Mhm.
Most of them ripped from the headlines, I believe. So get cue the Law and Order noise.
Bum bum.
And the way we're going to do this, we're going to go back and forth. Uh, we're going to give each other just the subject, and the other person is going to try to infer what that adventure might look like at the table
My
when it.
assumption is we're probably gonna have pretty similar thought processes after the titles, because we've done stuff somewhat similar to this in the past, but I'm curious to see how close we line up.
So I am going to roll a d2.
See who goes first.
Are you heads or tails, sir?
I will go with, I guess, odds, whatever that is.
All right, so you read yours first.
Alrighty. So the first one that I came across, and I'm very curious because you can kind of go two very distinct ways with it. A Velociraptor statue heist ends with 3 arrests, is the title of the article. So I guess I'll just throw that out there and see what your imagination comes up with.
So the first place my mind goes is that somebody has a high level wizard has cast Awakening on a Velociraptor statue, and it has run off on its own. And
Hmm.
the 3 people who've been arrested are the adventurers that were trying to retrieve it and stop it from wreaking havoc.
Okay. I as soon as I read it, I kind of pictured it as either a hook or the end of an adventuring quest, where the end goal or the end result is that the party got arrested for attempting to steal some sort of statue from some place, because that seems to be a very common occurrence more often than not. But the actual, I guess, hook is you could go the route of the 3 that are arrested being the adventuring party, but I also think it'd be interesting to have it almost be like a false flag or a frame job where the party is like pushed to get these 3 people arrested for stealing it when they themselves do. That was the first idea that popped into my head, and it's not super connected to the title, I suppose, but it did inspire such a thing, so a little bit different than your take, but yeah, so that was my first little one. Not too exciting. The actual article is super bland. They stole it, and the police showed up and then found it in their house, and they're like, "Well, we need that back." So
Can we get? Do they have a picture of the statue? Can we
they
throw that
don't.
somewhere? Because I want to
Um,
know. Is this? Are we talking like?
I could probably look up the museum they stole it from and maybe find a photo. I'll do that afterward, the fact.
Like, I
But
wonder if we're talking about like a classic gray stone statue of a velociraptor, or if this is more like a theme park,
it weighed
colored
100 pounds and was 6 feet tall. Oh wait, no. Yes. Yes.
100 pounds. So it can't be stone if it's 6 foot tall. So we're talking about like maybe resin or
Yeah.
something hollow.
Anyway, so that was my first one.
So I went a lot more broad with my topics. I may have to give you some blurb or some background to go off of. The most vague and boring selection that I made was the Library of Alexandria,
Okay.
and I'm going to be quoting Wikipedia a lot for this video, so I don't know, get over it. Um, the Great Library of Alexandria was the largest and most significant library of the ancient world. This was back uh, in ancient Greece, some of that BC time for you, and uh, actually part of a larger research institution. Imagine an ancient research institute, which was dedicated to the muses or the nine goddesses of the arts. This already sounds like the Elder Scrolls to me.
Hmm.
Um, and the pop culture understanding is that the Library of Alexandria burned down in some horrible disaster.
Hmm.
I've learned today. Today I learned TIL that the library actually experienced a slow decline over many years. It was not
Yeah.
destroyed all at once in a big catastrophe.
Yeah, but the way of like it's a lot more poetic to be like, oh, then it was all burned down. But yeah, the reality of it is much more elongated death. But that's like a very standard, or not standard, that's a common inspiration that you can see in a lot of different mediums. But also it's certainly coming to D&D and the fantasy world a few different times of like some long lost library or tome of academic knowledge or locked away secrets. There's the first thing that pops into my head is that buried library in the sand from the last Airbender. They find that like huge library that's guarded by like the owl spirit or something. So that is like, again, it's very broad, but that simple fact of like stumbling across this ancient source of knowledge that people thought were destroyed or lost or something of that sort, and that could be the beginning of an entire campaign, or that could be something small like a self-contained arc or quest. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I guess I don't want to go too specific with it because there's just so many directions you can take it. Um, and you could even go the more straight up route of like, it was legitimately destroyed, and now you're the one in charge of figuring out who destroyed it and why, or something of that, I guess, variety. So,
Yeah, those are all my mind definitely went to all those places.
mm-hmm.
What I personally settled on is actually using it as inspiration for a location in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So pre-destruction, um, you could almost just copy and paste. I mean, again, I that blurb that I read, this is a fantasy city that
Mm-hmm.
actually existed on our own Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, using that as an actual location pre-destruction, great if you've got a party with multiple magic users in it. Um, and also the idea of it being in decline. Again, just to I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, lift some points really quickly out of here. We're not doing any of these subjects, scholastic justice here. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
curious about any of these, take a trip to your local library
Or Wikipedia.
or Wikipedia. Go to the library and get on one of their computers and go to Wikipedia. But it was attacked.
Mm-hmm.
The library was attacked. The city it was in was attacked. I think that the fires, it did suffer some fires. They just weren't, all encompassing disasters. But they were arson. It was done by enemies of Alexandria. So there's a lot you can mine for a location for your world.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could even, there's so many different ways. Like, I'm just thinking of more ways where I should probably stop. But, like, you could even do, like, the before and after. You could show it at its height and then almost do, like, little vignettes of it, like, decaying, or the events that the party you're trying to stop is the leading to the decay of this source of knowledge. Like, maybe there is some antagonist that's sitting there trying, I can't speak, trying to, like, whittle away at the foundation of this place, and the party is the ones tasked with trying to figure him out and suss it out and that kind of stuff. So there's there's already a million ideas sprouting from that one. So
I mean, that's the point exactly. Is
mm-hmm.
it's a really broad subject, but you could build a whole campaign
Mm-hmm.
on any of these directions, on any of these ideas. So
I kind of love how differently we approach this topic as well, because I got like really catchy like one-liner headlines to be like, oh, that's fun to inject somewhere, but you brought like really broad like encompassing topics, so it's a bit of a different approach.
well, I'm going to give you credit for yours because they grab you. They grab you right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you
That's
don't
how I
have to
found them.
go to Wikipedia and do a half hour of reading to figure out
Mm-hmm.
like, wait, what's that?
Yeah. Mine are catchy and shallow for sure. That's the best way I would describe them. But you can always, that's like, as long as it begins the inspiration process, then I don't think the actual source matters all that much, as long as it gets the ball rolling. So that's kind of what I was going for. But.
Hit me with your next one on that note.
So this one, I actually really enjoyed. The title of this article is "Crowds of Visitors Travel to Missouri to see and touch a nun's non-decaying corpse." So a very small blurb about it is a nun was what's the term? Exhumed for various reasons, and she had been dead for a handful of years, and when she was exhumed, her body appeared to magically or divinely have not decayed without any sort of process having taken place. Like, it wasn't mummification or anything, so it seemed to be a miracle. So now there's plenty of people pilgrimaging there to touch the body and be with the body. So that was something very interesting, and I could 100% see being something.
Why, just as an aside, like, why was it exhumed? Why was
Uh,
she exhumed?
I mean, I scanned through it, but I don't know if they ever actually gave the exact reason.
That's a really important fact to leave out of your news story because I don't often think, I wonder how that dead body's doing. Let's go dig it up
It
and check it
gives
out.
me the day it was exhumed, but not the reason.
Wow.
Oh, it was exhumed by the monastery in preparation for a new shrine to be installed involving her reinterment, and was discovered to be a perfectly preserved religious habit, is the quote. So,
Ah,
so yeah, I
okay.
guess they were making a shrine for her, so then they had to exhume her for that, and the article follows. So,
So this one's a little tougher. In my mind, let's see. I I can't take credit for this. I believe this comes from an old web DM. But it's all I can think of, which is a hero, a legendary hero, who has died and been interred in a shrine and is being maintained by a chapter of monks who are repeatedly casting gentle repose on the body. and it's been going on for generations. They've
Mm-hmm.
been keeping up. They've been re-upping Gentle Repose for decades, maybe even centuries, because it's been foretold that the hero will come back when he or she is needed again. And so that's their way of like honoring that process,
Mm-hmm.
or trying to make sure that it's nice and easy for that hero to come back when the appointed time comes. And so it could be the party's job to try to convince the monks or that it's time, or to uh, they're being given a quest by the monks to set the events in motion, retrieve a MacGuffin that is needed for the actual resurrection or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, and again, that the idea of gentle repose being used in that way, that comes from WebDM. Props to them for that. But this reminds me of that as just such a cool idea, and a cool way to. As a side note, yet another side note. Again, get over it. Um, I really like when spells from the book can be integrated in a really interesting thematic and narrative way.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's such a compelling use of gentle repose, and a um evocative, like you'd really begin to imagine what this would look like, and what their lives would be like in this monastery, or whatever you want to call it. So usually we're just concerned about like, oh, how many damage dice does it do, what's the range.
Yeah, spells are
uh
usually like broken down in mechanics and very rarely thought about in a deeper sense.
so when it can be incorporated in a way that is narrative, i really I really am enthused by that. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's where my mind goes.
So like, I have a different way that I took it, but I actually had a somewhat similar piece of inspiration that's almost along the same lines of what you mentioned. A long time ago, I had this kind of running quest that I wanted to run. I don't think I actually like planted anywhere, but it's having a long forgotten hero or some sort of warrior or knight or something of the sort, a very famous adventurer that has been either encased or petrified in like a statue or some sort of monument for them, and they've been stuck there. Either it's a curse or did it themselves or some sort of prophecy, whatever you want to bring it up as. And people just think it's a, statue in the park or something, but then eventually it is discovered that they've been alive this whole time, or someone has bound them there or something. And so you could easily apply that to this, where they assumed they had died and buried them, and then they exhume them for whatever reason, and they're, for whatever reason, look exactly the same. They have not decayed. They look like they're still alive, and then come to discover they have been alive, but they've just been in some sort of coma or something. So that could be an interesting way of taking it. But the first way that I took this article was that it's some sort of sham or gimmick that the party is like, yeah, okay, sure. And then eventually they end up going there, and maybe it's a, snake oil salesman that is dressing up his grandmother to look like the nun, and, the party figures that one out and, helps the temple figure out that they're being conned. Or you could even go the route that there's like a necromancer that's trying to do something nefarious in this route, and it's certainly right down that alley. So that was my first idea, is it's some sort of trick or ploy to either get attention or reinvigorate some tourist attraction that has died out. So that's always a kind of easy way to pull the party in. So
It also makes me think about a character from Ismiliath. I thought, I can't I can't remember his name, which is
gasp.
a tragedy. It's
Who are
really
we talking
poor
about?
poor of me. The oh, and I came up with his name too, and now I can't remember the
Oh,
name that I came
Lord
up with.
Solomon.
No, no, no. The like the early Chevalier commander that
Oh God, yeah,
was
that's gonna
still
be a.
alive
Oh, what
after.
was his name? It was Diamant or Diamant something. It was French sounding. It had that like D hyphen whatever.
the point
Mhm,
is that he made an appearance in our time, even though he was a
mhm,
character that I came up with for the lore that
mhm,
was like, I don't know, 100 or 200 years prior.
mhm,
And you took it in an interesting direction. He was being sustained by divine power because he
mhm,
had a divine purpose to fulfill. But normally you'd think like if you're being sustained by divine power, then you're traditionally immortal.
mhm.
But you went the route of him continuing to age.
Yeah, yeah.
So he wouldn't die, but he was continuing to just get more and more and more frail and old.
Mhm,
Almost like the Knight Templar from Indiana Jones and the
mhm.
Holy Grail.
Or even again, there's
Last
some
Crusade, Last Crusade.
yeah, there's some real life examples of like Buddhist monk that have lived to be like in their late hundreds or whatever, that are like paper thin and their skin is like sucked to their bones and like they look dead but they're still technically alive.
Right.
So that was very much the image I was trying to depict is he's like this paper thin, wrinkled little raisin of a human being and yeah, that was interesting. So
No, I didn't have a point in bringing that up other than it just made me made me think about that story,
mhm.
that aspect.
Yeah. So I like that title because it immediately just kind of like, I don't know, it felt very fantasy to me, or you could take that a bunch of different ways. So that's why it grabbed my attention. So,
So my next one actually comes from the news, for a change, and it's the story that inspired this topic. It's what uh led to this video. A man knocked down a wall in his basement. He found an abandoned underground city that was once home to 20,000 people. It's a city named Derinkuyu in the nation of Turkey that at its lowest point is 280 feet below the surface. Uh, which is not, that's, if you're having trouble visualizing that, like that's nearly a football field
mhm.
down. Um, and he rediscovered it looking for lost chickens.
What a way to find it. I thought it was gonna be like he's making renovations or something, but lost chickens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that immediate like that is such I don't want to say common, but like it's such a perfect fit for this topic. Like you can take that so many ways. The first thing that comes to mind is obviously there is a random commoner or maybe like a wealthy landowner that has this event take place and hires an adventuring party to go and explore it because they don't want to do it themselves, or perhaps there's some unnice inhabitants at this point. The other idea that instantly comes to mind, which is another interesting way to take it, I suppose, is the party owns some sort of like stronghold or castle or home that's like their HQ or their home base, and as they are adding to it or exploring or whatever, knock down a wall, ancient city. That would certainly grab their attention. You could even use that to try and inject a little bit of I don't know, danger, I suppose, in a place where they think they're safe. Though you might have to do a little bit of lore gymnastics to explain how an ancient civilization didn't figure out the party was living right above them for however many years. But, D&D, baby. But yeah, there's so many different ways you could fit that in. And it's the dungeons of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, you can't not avoid that connection right there. So that is a perfectly fitting title and article, I suppose.
The the place my mind went initially was that this was like the very upper strata of the Underdark.
Hmm.
Some like back road into the Underdark that had been bricked over and kind of forgotten about. But I feel like the Underdark is getting to be a little played out, dare I say. Um, so what I settled on is there's so many small races and ancestries in D&D that this would be that would fit right in here. And so I'm imagining some sort of um secret cabal of halflings or even fae.
Mhm.
Um Now fae don't usually suit my taste because they're so kind of wacky. In D&D especially, like they're the monster that's most likely to, I say monster, they're the creature most likely to pants you
Mhm.
as opposed to actually do anything
Yeah, turn
harmful or
you into a
serious.
goat instead of actually attack you or something.
Yeah, right. Um but yeah, a secret halfling town that's underneath some other town, and the strife that ensues when one realizes the other is down there,
Mhm.
um or up there as the case may be.
I think I might be getting this lore wrong, but I remember seeing this a while back. I don't know how familiar you are with fantasy Warhammer lore. But I think the Skaven, which is like the rat folk of that world or that universe, the way that they were discovered is there was some like dwarven settlement that delved too deep or like dug into their little hideout, and then they like erupted, and it was called like the Blight or something, and they like took over this human town because they were discovered. So you could certainly also take this, I guess, inspiration and inject it in that way too, where they come across some cluster of plague rats or some curse or a cluster of vampires or something of that sort. And that leads to some giant event where the world's now shifted, or there is now turmoil between those two factions, I suppose. But yeah, that's another little nugget that got in there. So.
uh the last sort of thing that kind of bubbles to the surface for me is that um it's cursed,
Hmm.
and it's so cursed that they just built a whole other town over it to just forgot
We'll just start
tried to
over.
forget that it was down there. Just forget it. Nope. Let's start laying bricks down. Uh, why they would do that instead of just leaving it to
Hmm.
become a ghost town is for you to figure out in your
Hmm.
campaign. But
Yeah.
what have you got next?
So this one, I'm really curious if you're even going to remotely get on the same track as me. And again, it's very surface level. So I guess there's a joke there that I'm not smart enough to make right now. But anyway, the Yellowstone Park is cordoned off as a baffling new mud-slinging geyser erupts. The little blurb that I'll throw out there is randomly geysers that were thought to be, I guess, unassumed to be active. I don't know what the term is for that. Began to just erupt randomly, and scientists are baffled. And they are slinging boiling hot and almost lava-esque like mud and dirt and debris. And it seems like a very like almost apocalyptic event in a very small, isolated location. So that was interesting. Certainly grabbed my attention. So I'm curious what your initial thoughts are on that.
So, uh, there's I like the notion that there are creatures that are so powerful or so ancient that the area around their lair will exhibit signs of their influence.
Hmm. Well, that's
So I
supposed to be like a dragon kind of thing, right? In D&D, it's like you'll see terrain change the longer a dragon resides somewhere.
so uh I this feels like a classic to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's, let's just say, a dragon, an ancient dragon that has been in torpor for, again, generations and is waking up. And as it's waking up, these these signs are starting to appear. uh and there's one old dude in the village that remembers, like, the last time these geysers were bubbling, it was the time of horrors, and everybody, oh,
Yeah,
whatever, old
okay,
man.
Gerald. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. uh that's where my mind goes first.
I'm honestly surprised that we kind of both went that route because I kind of went down the same line, but a little less extreme, I suppose. Like I thought of like some sort of subterranean creature was rising to the surface, whatever that could be, whether again it's like something as powerful as like a dragon or whatever. But I
An
like the
elemental.
idea. Yeah, but it could even be like if you're doing like a monster hunting campaign, like there is a specific type of creature, or being, or monster that showcases itself in this way. I don't want to say like the Tarrasque. I think there is pretty developed lore around it, but something of that sort of like this creature only comes to the surface once every 300 years to whatever, make up whatever, I don't know, reason you need. And this is the signal of it approaching, which maybe it's happening in the middle of a town or a city, and it's like incredibly chaotic, and people's houses are actively being burst into this huge geyser, or it's out in the middle of nowhere, and the adventurers now have to go and find it, discover it, track it down, that kind of stuff. So yeah, kind of surprised that we both went that direction, but I guess that's where it was going. So.
Great minds think alike,
Mhm.
or often overlap. Then this one I'm gonna do a little quicker. It kind of speaks for itself, honestly.
Mhm.
Fort Alexander, which is an artificial Russian island and an old naval base that at the turn of the 20th century, so around 1900, circa 1900, was used as a research base for the Black Death. Uh,
Oh.
they were conducting research into the plague on this artificial island uh, using horses, and some of the staff, a handful of the staff, as I understand, did contract the plague accidentally while they were researching it on this naval base.
This is like instantly screaming like grotesque body horror to me. Maybe that's just me, but like I'm picturing these like horrific centaur, minotaur, horse people like mutations like now dominating this island after it hasn't been heard from for hundreds of years, and there's some specific artifact or vial or key that is needed, and so the party's sent to retrieve it. And yeah, I'm just picturing like awful, awful stuff. But yeah, I think it's because
As
an island. There's something creepy about an isolated island.
Especially a little one. Like if you
Hmm.
look up a picture of this place, it's very small.
Hmm.
You know,
And it's a
we're
research
talking.
facility. Like you're hitting all of the
Yeah.
markers. Hmm.
Um, my mind went to a very similar place, except in my burgeoning budding adventure, it's more recent. It's a place that's being used for some kind of research that
Hmm.
needs to be on an isolated artificial island because it's so dangerous. Uh, and it's current. It was ongoing, and now we lost contact,
Hmm.
and we sent the supply ship. Nobody came to greet it, and they didn't get off the ship, so they just turned around and
Hmm.
came back as per our protocol.
Hmm.
We want you adventurers that we don't care if you live or die to go find out what's happening on Plague Island.
This is a little bit of a side note or a tangent, but I wonder how effective or how interesting you could make combating an invisible foe like a plague or an illness can be in like D&D, like because like traditionally you're so used to like fighting the dragon or the zombies or something of that sort. Like, is there a compelling way to fight the plague? Like, I don't know. I feel like that would be an uphill battle, but it could be cool if done right.
Especially for a low level adventure or an adventure in a low magic setting,
Mm-hmm.
or it's simply something that does not respond to healing magic as the
Mm-hmm.
party knows it.
Yeah. So my last two are a little bit more just hooks than full things, even though that's a lot of my shit. But one of the last ones that I have is a researcher randomly finds an intact safe washed up on the beach. And again, this sounds right out of like a random table for like rolling a plot hook or an adventure hook, because this could go any direction you really feasibly wanted to take it. But it's one of those classics of like, oh, random thing happened, let's see where it goes. But yeah, that's one of my last ones that you could go basically anywhere with.
So if I'm running that encounter, the safe is very difficult to open.
Hmm.
Even if there's a rogue in the party, it might be like a DC 20 or 25.
Hmm.
Because I want to draw it out long enough to get the party to speculate what's inside it,
Hmm.
and that's going to tell me what's inside it.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't even want to come up with what's inside. I just want to
Hmm.
drop the safe in front of the party that they have a really hard time getting into,
Hmm.
and just see where they take it. You know, do they try to find the rightful owner, like, nice lawful good guys? Are they trying to get in it for treasure?
Hmm.
There's uh
Quick DM tip that comes directly from that little tangent, I suppose, or answer. That is a very effective way of using quest hooks, is putting it there, letting the party interact with it, and then finding your direction based off of what the party does with it versus you having a plan going into it. Works 9 out of 10 times. Not guaranteed.
and even if you don't directly lift something that the party blurts out,
Hmm.
they're going to give you an idea that's probably better than what you would have come up with sitting by yourself before the
Hmm.
game started.
Hmm.
So, uh, yeah, that would be super fun.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
want
so
to in our current campaign, I want to find a safe just randomly on the side of the road.
yeah, but I mean, basically, my answer is about the same as yours. Is like it would happen whether it's an NPC that stumbles upon it and then the party is asked to investigate, or the party itself stumble upon it. I would then figure out what they think is in it or what they think it might be connected to. Like currently, if it was discovered right now in our campaign, it would be connected to the investigation that has been going on the past couple weeks. And then it would be like, oh, okay, well, how do they think it connects to the investigation? And then I would somehow figure that out. So, yeah, very similar track of letting the party kind of tell me what's in there.
My next to last topic is North Sentinel Island, which is an island off the coast of India. It's in the, again, per Wikipedia, it's in the Bay of Bengal in the northeastern Indian Ocean.
Hmm.
North Sentinel Island is home to an indigenous people who are one of the last groups of isolated people to this day in 2023 on North Sentinel Island. There is a tribe of indigenous people that do not have contact with the outside world. They live in, as far as I could find, they live in a Stone Age sort of fashion because they're isolated, completely cut off from the rest of the world. They've been declared protected by the governments in the area, and it is against the law to approach within 3 miles of the island. And people who have drifted to the island or even gone there on purpose have been killed
I
by the
when you brought
inhabitants.
up the name, I immediately remembered from a couple years ago that some like influencer went there and got killed. Uh,
Uh,
and that was the whole
fish,
story.
fishermen,
Hmm.
illegal fishermen, or they were
Hmm.
fishing where they weren't supposed to be and drifted onto the island. They were killed by
Hmm.
the the people there. Their bodies were displayed on the beach like
Well,
scarecrows.
imagine it from the other perspective too, right? Being the indigenous people, and then randomly this like floating mechanism that is like beyond your comprehension with all this equipment and technology that you don't know just like washes up on shore. That in itself could be a reverse way of seeing this quest hook, I suppose. Um, but yeah, that is a plethora of interesting ways you can inject that and take that.
And it just blows my mind to think that today, right now,
Hmm.
as you are watching this or listening to us,
Hmm.
there is a place on Earth uh, where the human beings there have been living the same way for thousands
Hmm.
of years. Uh, straight out of again an Indiana Jones movie. um, right now today as we're sitting here making a show on the internet.
Yeah, talking to each other from across the vast distance of the internet. God,
So
they
take it
would think
away.
this is some like cursed black magic shit. Like thinking that we're like looking into a mirror and like reading someone else's soul or something like that. But how would they even begin to try and like explain this? But
99% of our modern world would just
mm-hmm.
be complete like
Mm-hmm.
uh hit it with a rock, kill it with fire, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. We need to not stumble down the rabbit hole of like sci-fi stuff and things being magic that is explained by science and that whole thing, because that is a whole thing. But anyway, um, my last one, which again a lot more is a quest hook versus like an actual adventure, I suppose, is a Quebec woman finds a message in a bottle launched 34 years earlier. And again, this sounds like it just came from a random quest hook table. But I loved it. Like I saw it and instantly I was like, you can't get better than the message in a bottle trope. So,
uh for me, I think what's in that bottle is a message, but it's also a scroll
hmm
that uh when it is read summons the caster,
ooh,
and they may not have intended, like they were trying to escape a bad situation, whether they are a good guy caster or a villain caster, uh and didn't know how long it was going to take for their scroll in a bottle to get opened. It was a Hail Mary last ditch effort, and now the party has to deal with the consequences
ooh, I actually love that.
of, yeah.
The article itself is not all that exciting. But I guess the person who found the note tried to track down who originally wrote it. And the person who had originally wrote it had died, but the son was still around and like recognized the handwriting. And apparently the father had this hobby of like just throwing messages in a bottle out there for shits and giggles, basically. Had been doing it for a long time. And so I think that's also kind of a fun spin or a fun addition, I guess you can use of, for whatever reason, there is this individual that is perpetually trying to like get this message to someone or to see what happens. You could very much go with like almost like a trickster god or just someone that has a lot of fucking time on their hands, hoping that their message is discovered by some curious creature. And you could even go the route of it being some sort of summoning scroll or some sort of joke or gag spell that curses them for some time. And he's just an agent of chaos, just casting little pellets of craziness into the world. So
I also like the idea that it's a call for help.
yeah, I think that's
That
the easy one though.
Well, that someone is sending these messages, come save me. I'm
hmm
in this tower on this artificial island,
hmm
let's say, but the party doesn't realize until they get there how old the message is.
Ah, yeah, that could be interesting. The other thing is like they show up and it's all like a game. It's some powerful wizard has set up like a trial or a test or something. So,
All right, my last one is the Centralia mine fire. This is in Centralia, Pennsylvania, here in the good old US of A. Uh, the story goes that the town of Centralia, it was never a big town, like 1,500 people, something like that, were burning the landfill many years ago, decades ago. Were burning the landfill back in the 60s in order to clear it for Memorial Day celebrations or something like that. And they accidentally set fire to a vein of coal.
hmm.
And it's still on fire. It's continuing to burn and has been burning since the 60s, since they accidentally set it on fire. Uh, and it runs underneath the whole town, and it will open cracks in the road and belch smoke out of holes in the ground, and the town has had to have been abandoned.
Hmm.
Over the years, that there's no living there because the coal under the town is still on fire. According to Wikipedia, it could continue to burn for another 250 years.
Damn. Like, besides kind of just like ripping that and replacing it of it being a mine and being a coal mine and that being the fuel, my mind immediately drifts kind of back to what we were talking about before of some sort of like creature or source or like return of something kind of marking this event or causing this thing to happen, like, or even perhaps there was some powerful deity attempted to being summoned there by some individual some time ago and it like failed or got halfway through, or it's a lengthy process of this like powerful infernal being summoned to this place, so it's slowly crackling the environment in the town and the city. Or it could be some slumbering creature was disturbed when the townspeople set their landfill on fire. You go a bunch of different routes, but yeah, the I think more the imagery of a pretty, like, it sounds like a pretty small town, a little bit of like a podunk out of the way location, I suppose, being abandoned and left in this like smoldering, cindering wasteland of like perpetual cracks and smokes and geysers of plumes of coal being shot up into the sky. It's very it's an interesting setting that you could do a lot with. I think it would be cool to just like describe and explore a lot of environmental hazards.
I am imagining a would-be warlock
Hmm.
toying with powers that he does not understand, cannot control, and has engaged in a this is like again a zero level commoner that has decided to try to wrest
Who's
some power
played
for
with
himself,
fire.
and he has uh either he did it wrong, and instead of binding a demon to his will, it's just sort of this slow process, this a painfully slow process that is slowly ruining the town. Um, or he he did it too well, perhaps under the mischievous or deceptive guidance of something from the infernal plane. And now instead of summoning a demon and binding it to his will, he has opened a door. Just a crack.
Hmm.
But as time goes on, it's opening wider and wider.
That's like I guess probably even the same concept somewhat is like the town itself is slowly being teleported to the infernal plane, or maybe they're merging to become one, and so like it's both of the realities are now, I guess, spreading in this location.
This fool, and again, the time frame is whatever you want it to be. Like this could even
Hmm.
be again something that was set in motion, 50 years before the party got there. But this fool of a Took has began lowering a drawbridge to hell. Uh, and all of the smoke and the holes opening up in the ground are telling you the time is getting ever closer.
That's a good one. I like that one.
That is the end of my list.
Yeah. It was the end of mine. Mine feel very small potatoes in comparison, but I'll take it.
I feel like these all would have their place in
Hmm.
a really fun campaign.
Well, yeah, as I said, I think like we took it in two very different ways, where mine was more like grabbing your attention real quick and then figuring it out later, and yours was like these kind of larger ideas that you could like really dive into.
I also think that this has its place in another installment down the line. I want to do
Hmm.
this again,
I think
but
like it's cool to do it with certain aspects like real world inspiration, or we did it kind of previously with like our favorite fantasy inspiration, but there honestly we could just go with like the hodgepodge episode where we just throw out interesting ideas or concepts or things that we've thought about but never brought to fruition. Just to be like an inspiration in general video that people could pull from, I suppose. So
It all leads to us talking on the internet, so I'm in favor. You know what's coming next.
Yep.
Let us know down in the comments which ones were your favorites, or the ideas that they gave you, or any examples you want to share of the fantasy world creeping into real life, and other glitches in the Matrix. And while you're there, like and subscribe. And if you like and subscribe real hard, we'll do this again sometime.
So were you surprised at all on how similar our answers or our ideas were?
No, I usually I I feel like there should be some weird German compound word for, like, we're either on the same wavelength or we are completely opposite. There's not like
That
an in
does, yeah,
between.
tend to be the general landing point for us, is we're either like in each other's minds or we are standing on the opposite ends of the field.
So much like a pair of magnets, let's say. You know, we're either locked together or turned the other way, and it's like, what are you doing? I was doing this. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm afraid I might be bipolar.
Aren't we all? It is 2023.
Yeah. Yeah. What speaking of things from the headlines, and it being 2023, apparently the rate of mental health crises, let's say, has got people saying we need new antidepressant drugs.
That'll solve it.
Maybe we could just make the world better.
Wouldn't that be the easy solution?
Just a little bit at a time. Like we're doing right here on Natural 2.
Oh, yeah, yeah. This is a little sliver of improvement that we offer up to the world.
You know what? If nothing else, it makes my world better.
There you go. That's all it takes is one person.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
As my famous quoted philosopher Mephidius once said, aim for the stars but shoot for the moon. Oh, no one's gonna get that, but I had to. I'm sorry.
Said ask what that was in the comments. Also send us your questions. Still want questions for our mailbag episode. And if you have any characters left after the floodgates were opened by our commentary in this episode, tell us who's hotter, Chris Pine or Jake Gyllenhaal.
Okay, we gotta conclude. We're not even starting this one.
We'll answer that question and more next time on Natural 2.
But until next time, have a good one.